What is going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Pod Scum. That's right. You looked for it. You found it. This right here is the podcast where we dive into the deep, dark, murky waters with a plethora of legendary guests. I am, of course, your host, your bastard of ceremonies, the number one scumbag, Rex Ruger. That's R-E, triple up that X. You might also know me as the king of sleaze, which I definitely am, a.k.a. the hair metal high priest, and most importantly, a.k.a. Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. That's right. Take a look. Search your heart. Search your feelings. My lawyers are searching right now to prove it conclusively through DNA testing that you are looking at the son of glam, the front man for the band. Just smoked a few grams. I got 1 million fans. I'm your ice cream man, Mr. Wop Bop Loo Bop Wop Bam Bam Shazam. Hot damn. Whew, tell me I'm not a chip off the old block. I am feeling good, and most importantly, everybody in the house is looking good, including my beautiful audience out there. For me, the only way to get the quaff like Roth, you guessed it, product placement, baby. That's what a good podcaster does. Coming to you as always from the lush Lavender Lounge of Love, and joined as always by the great Keith Hernandez puppet, number 17 in your programs, number 1 in your hearts. There he is right there, folks. New York Met great, an occasional contributor to the podcast when he wants to. This is, of course, the No Frills podcast. You don't get frills, but you do get thrills. That's looking at this beautiful face and the faces of all my beautiful guests, including the one I got today, who's joining us right now. So let's get into it and chop it up with them. No bullshit. Let's go.
Hey.
Finally, NIKO WENNER. We finally get the chance to do this, huh?
I'm good. Yes. How are you, Mark?
I feel like, you know what? I feel like that right off the rip, this is, of course, NIKO WENNER from OXBOW. I feel like right off the rip, you may be snickering a little bit at the hair. But make no mistake about it, NIKO. Make no mistake that I'll touch on this briefly, that I am in serious litigation right now to try to prove once and for all that I am Diamond David Lee Roth Jr.'s son. So fear not, man. Fear not. I've spoken to the attorneys. We're almost where we want to be. And you know what? I just want to wet my beak a little bit on a little bit of that 1984 money. That's all.
Oh, yeah. That would come with some interesting benefits and some interesting downsides to be the son of that.
Yeah,
that
I can see where it could be a little bit of both. But listen, first of all, NIKO, I'm so glad that we finally got the chance to do this. As I said,
oh yeah.
I find OXBOW, to be a very refreshing departure from a lot of the music out there, and there certainly is a lot of it. I mean, there's just a huge influx of music out there, especially with streaming platforms and everything that's going on today. Music business is so vastly different from what it once was. But I'm interested, you specifically, as such a creative type and such a driving force behind that band, what is your particular creative process when you're going to write music? Are you one of these guys that just gets sparks of ideas throughout the day? Do you treat it like a job and set aside time to write? What's your process like?
For me, it's about collecting those moments of inspiration and holding on to them, putting usually these days into my phone, recording them and going back to them later. So they come, like with everybody, they come all the time, and it's just paying attention to it. For me, putting down an idea, either singing it into my phone or playing it on guitar if I have a guitar there, and collecting them. You know how life is. You don't always have time. You're not able to work through an idea, especially now with kids and life. So paying attention, collecting them, and then going back and saying, oh, this is good. Oh, this idea. Usually the funny thing for me is that a couple ideas that come in the same day will usually work together. What does that mean? I don't know, but yeah. Something about the progression of the hours in a day, the music, the ideas that I have every day, those will make sense together. You could have them be the bridge of the song or the melody on top of that chord progression that you sang in the morning or whatever. So, and then it's just, then you go back and work on it. So it's little tiny bit of sparks and paying attention to them, and then a lot of work.
And as a whole, as a collective unit, the band OXBOW, and I've had Eugene on here. We talked more, pugilism and combat and about his book really than we did OXBOW. Touched on it very little, but as a collective unit, what's the creative process like with the band? Albeit, do you guys all bring individual ideas? Do you guys get together collaboratively and jam as a band? Does one guy have the lion's share of the ideas?
Mm-hmm. The way that I've been thinking about that lately, that meaning our creative process, is that I'm the most willing to spend the time on it. I don't know if Dan and Greg have musical ideas. They don't bring them in. They don't work on them. So I'm willing to spend the time, and I'm willing to put myself out there. It's a very naked feeling to bring in, hey guys, I've got this idea. Oh yeah, that sucks. That can be, that happens, and it can be that way. And so it's tough and if an idea is any good, you need to have a connection with it. And when people don't like it, then it can hurt, right?
Yeah.
So you need to trust the people you're working with. So I'm willing to put myself out there with those guys. And so I collect the ideas, I work on them, I bring them in, and then we collectively sort of smooth things out. For me, I have drum ideas, I have bass ideas. Dan is a much better bass player, and he has his own view, and it makes the song better when we have someone else's view, someone else's awesome playing as a bass player. Same with drums. Greg will always write a better part, but if I can bring in an idea, that speeds the process of getting things done. Often though, I would say maybe 25% of the time, maybe 1/5 of the time, I don't know. We will jam together and we record our rehearsals, and improvisation will create a part of a song. And again, I'm the one that goes back and listens to the rehearsal recordings and say, oh, that's cool. And so, for example, the song Icy White and Crystalline on Love's Holiday, that was 2 different rehearsal jams. One I recorded on my phone, the other, maybe it was on my phone, but it was like, oh, that's cool. It's like distorting my phone.
Yeah.
But, and it takes hours and hours, and it takes some interest and just some creativity to say, oh, this part is good, this part is not good. And then we needed a B section. Oh, I remembered that other part. It has a melodic part on the guitar, and it's 20 minutes of screwing around. But within that, there's this little melody. Let's have that be the B section of Icy White. Cool. And for this record, Eugene wrote lyrics to the music. In the past, from Fuckfest, our first record, through, he's rarely written lyrics to music. Usually he'll write a group of lyrics, and then I will take music ideas, as I was talking about, and say this idea works with this lyric, and then complete the ideas, the music to the lyric. This time, I was super inspired and wrote a bunch of music songs, and we went so fast that Eugene ran out of lyrics and said, oh, okay, I need to write lyrics to these songs that have developed. So it's a different way of working this time.
Yeah, and knowing how active Eugene is with his various, his writing endeavors as an author and a columnist and journalist, and his own web shows, that has to be a miracle to you to find out that Eugene doesn't have anything left to say, huh?
Well,
he ran out of lyrics, huh?
It's funny. It's sort of like we all have a fire hose that we do. So for me, it's finding the little bits of creativity. Like I said, saving them. That's good. That's not.
Yeah.
For Eugene, it was like, oh, you should ask him, but my impressions sitting there in the room, oh, this is a new song. What? Okay. And he'll sit there in rehearsal and just take that moment out to take the fire hose of creativity, push it towards this song, bingo, lyrics. And, he will edit them later, but they're about, 75, 80% complete at that point, with the different stanzas, with the rhymes or the not rhymes, the internal rhyme to the lyric. And So, it wasn't that he just didn't know at this
Right.
point.
That was meant more tongue in cheek because obviously
Oh, I
I
know.
love Eugene. I
Yeah.
love Eugene to death, and I just imagine like a guy that's so creatively influenced all the time and has so many different endeavors going. It's hard to imagine like somebody saying, "Hey, we've got all this music. Eugene, catch up with the lyrics here," because he just seems like he's always a creative mind at work.
For sure, for sure. So sometimes I think, given that there is the ability to do things so quickly, I will often propose, hey guys, why don't we write a record really quickly and put it out? And that's, you should laugh because that's not the way that we've made records ever in the past. We've always
Right.
taken a long time. And, the guys will push back on that idea because what we've done is, I think, works for us. And that's part of why I think OXBOW is, I don't know, I'm careful about saying unique, but we do what we do because of the carefulness in the recording and in the writing process. Yes, it has those moments of inspiration, and yes, Eugene can write lyrics really quickly, and I'll have all these ideas, just put them together, bingo, bass line, drums, record, we're done.
Yeah.
But then there's a lot of polishing, a lot of decision making, the overdubs. In the past, our recordings have had lots of orchestration and stuff, and that seems to work well for us. Now, we did do a record in '93 with Steve Albini that we recorded top to bottom in 4 days. Our third record, Let Me Be a Woman, here in San Francisco, Steve flew out and we went to a really nice studio, and we spent 12-hour days, but by the end of it we had mixes, the tape was cut together, and we could then master the record. So we can do that, and I'm interested to do that. And essentially the creative process is that it's super fast, but it's fun to let things sit. For example, there's 2 songs on the new record on Love's Holiday that are 20 years old.
Yeah.
And that's cool. And I think that gives a different view to the music. One of my goals, I love songs that sound like they've been around forever.
Yeah.
There's certain songs you hear it and you go, wow, have I heard that before? Is it something? No, but they have a feel, and the way people play them, the way that they sing them. I think that's a really beautiful thing. One of the ways to get that is to have a song sit around for a long time and to have that familiarity and to just be comfortable with it. And then when recording is maybe a final idea, a final version of that. And at the final version, it sounds like you've been singing it since you're a kid. And that's a really cool thing.
And is there pressure, either personally on yourself, as a creative force behind the band, or collectively as a band? Do you guys feel, because the music business has changed so vastly, and people are consuming music much differently, and attention spans seem to be down? Obviously, people are getting an influx of just shit thrown at them in a million different directions in today's society. Do you ever feel like a pressure? It's getting back to a very singles driven market. It's nice that you guys let stuff develop organically, but do you ever feel like a pressure, like, God, people are going to forget, we've got to get something out, or are you guys able to kind of pull back and not put that kind of pressure on yourselves?
Yeah, it's a long answer for that very good question. We've decided to not try to support ourselves with all the huge amounts of money that we make with the band. So we've sort of taken the pressure of making money out of the equation. In fact, we spend so much money on our recordings and our videos and stuff. So having done that, we agreed, then it's cool. We don't want people to forget us. And we talk a lot about, should we make singles? And we came to what I think is an interesting decision. It's that one of the things that we do well is to make an album, statement. We all grew up on albums, a collection of songs that make sense together, either in a linear fashion, or the ideas just, they all have a cohesion. And that's really fun for me, to make things musically cohere. And there's a lot of ways that people do that. We can talk about that if you want. Lyrically, ideas, there's always ideas between the music and the lyric that agree, and that's one. So we decided to make albums and to continue to do that, and we have put out single songs in the past, and that's really interesting, and that can make things go faster. And
Right.
God knows, we would like to build our audience. I want to talk to more people. That's appealing to me, to to grow our audience. But I think we need to do what we do well, and one of the things is to make a statement with a bunch of songs together. So that's what we've been working on. Right now, we're working on another record. And rather than piecemeal out these 9 songs we've begun recording, we're going to make another album. So that's kind of what we decided to do, right or wrong.
So you guys do like the release format of an LP, because obviously it's a very polarizing topic now. As I said, people are putting out a lot of singles. People are going the EP route. I think they realized that, people aren't doing the conventional thing that they did back in the day and put an album on and listen to it from start to finish. But me as a 50-year-old guy, I appreciate being able to put down a full album. Is that the release format that fits you guys the best?
So far, yes. I mean, we made an EP. It was about 40 minutes long. We made a record called Songs for the French back in around the turn of the century, early 2000s.
Although 40 minutes is an album for most bands.
Exactly. So one song was live recordings of us playing older songs live. The other side was improvisations that we'd made with a French guitar friend of ours, a guy named Philippe Hiffen, and that was really cool. So talking about making music quickly, we went into a really beautiful studio, recorded improvisations for maybe almost 2 days, edited those down, found the good parts, beginnings and endings. Eugene wrote lyrics, sang over them. So that's an instance of him writing lyrics to music that exists, and put it out. And that was cool. And we have other improvs from those sessions. So that could have, that sort of is both. It's a short form improvisations that we finished and put out, but still it took a long time, so I don't know. Part of the answer to that for us is to just keep ourselves interested, to keep doing different things. I could see us, doing anything you imagine in the future, because we've been doing this for 35 years.
Yeah, quite a run. Yeah.
And we love what we do, but it's keeping us engaged, keeping all of us. We're different people. We have a lot of similar interests, but keeping me engaged is a way of doing something different,
Yeah.
So that's a goal as well. Who knows what will happen?
And both personally and as a band, what was the impact, or were you guys in the middle of a project, or did it put a damper on anything that you had going on when COVID hit and we were all of a sudden hunkered down and quarantined, and going on and doing live shows was not a thing for a while? How did that affect you guys? Was it a particularly fruitful period for you as far as creating and writing? Did you guys as a band kind of sit back and take some time to recharge the batteries? What was that time like for you?
It was lockdown, and the COVID in general was challenging for everybody. And you see those stories. And what I noticed and what people say, I agree. Creative people tended to either be really super creative or to be super not creative.
Yeah.
We as a band, talking about OXBOW, we'd started to record an album after a super fruitful period. So for me, there's a lot of family things that happened. We had our first kid, my wife and I, in 2017, and I just started writing songs on a tear and completed them and paid attention to the ideas. Every day I would come in and sing to this little kid that we had made. It's the most amazing thing.
Wild. Yeah.
Do you have kids?
I have 3 and I have 6 grandchildren. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
So, and so I was really into paying attention. I was really into those ideas came vocally, and I would record them in my phone. And strangely, I realized that when I would wake up at 5:30 to change the first diaper of the day or whatever, I would sing in tune. I was in tune to the piano. So I don't have perfect pitch. I can't tell you what the note is.
Yeah.
But it turns out that I have this tuning that is at A440. So I guess that's there's a word for it. I haven't figured out what the word is yet. But so I would record stuff and then write songs based on that. We ended up with 17 songs, and we started to record them in December 2019. We went back to the studio with Joe Ciccarelli in March of 2020, just before the lockdown, just as the stories about this disease, this new thing started happening. And then, boom, lockdown. We had all these bass, drums, guitar songs, 17 of them. And the strange things kept happening. I lost my job. I hurt my back really badly, but I couldn't go see a doctor, of course.
Right.
And then, so for me, it was a really tough time, and I just shut down. I didn't do a damn thing. So the recording sat there for a year and a half. So now we're into 2021. And Joe, who we've been making records with since 2005 with Narcotic Story, he said, "Hey, let's get together. Let's put some vocals on these songs."
Yeah.
And I said, okay. So we went to the studio, put on masks, and Eugene recorded 17 vocals. And I'd written one new song. My father died the year before that, and that was partly inspired by that. There's another song that we haven't used yet. And we recorded a brand new song, vocal and acoustic guitar. So here we have 18 songs. We finished 9 of those songs for Love's Holiday. We have the other 9 that we're working on now. So it was super fruitful, and then super like nothing for a very long time. And then now we're back to making another record. So it's came out the other side with like a lot of vim and vigor, a lot of enthusiasm to keep going.
But who would have known that having a child would make you pitch perfect? I mean, go figure.
I've heard stories about women who they stop needing glasses when they get pregnant. Not so much with guys. I haven't heard that. So I think I had it before, but I didn't pay attention. I think there's so many people on Earth that have enormous potential. There's people that could be great scientists. There's people that could be great piano players, but they don't have the ability. They're not put in front of a piano. There's a name for this theory, but for me, it's just paying attention to those bits of creativity, recording them in my phone, realizing, holy shit, all that stuff is in tune with the piano.
Yeah,
it's not between the notes. So, I like what you say. I don't think the kids changed it, except the kids maybe pay attention.
And one thing that I'm really intrigued about, and I've done so many episodes and talked to so many musicians, but you guys are really quite the anomaly. I think I'm using that word in the proper context. You just talked about 30 plus years together, and the same lineup. How do you explain that? How the hell can you keep 4 guys working cohesively together? Because it seems like whenever I have musicians on here, and I get my bullet points and I do my research on them, and invariably I seem to always end up on their Wikipedia page. And that ex-members list is for some bands can be like everybody and their brother's been in this band. What's the dynamic here with these 4 guys in particular that's kept you guys together and not having ripped out each other's throats?
We're good at wriggling free and not getting our throats ripped out.
I guess.
Because God knows we try. I'm going to start at the end of that. The end of that is that I appreciate what we're able to do, having been the same guys for so long, having known these guys. We're able to do things that are really deep, and we could talk about the particulars of that, but it's a level of trust and a level of familiarity. Familiarity breeds contempt, yes, but also familiarity can make we make things, and that knowing each other can allow us to get really deep on what we're doing.
Right.
And that's very cool. We've been making records, I have to say, with Joe Ciccarelli now since 2005. The level of trust and the level of just, yeah, I get it. Let's go. I get it. Yes. Oh, interesting. Okay, let's do something different. That sort of integration is so worthwhile. So it's a beautiful thing we've done to be able to still create and make things together. So I appreciate that. It's really hard. It's I don't know if you have brothers and sisters, but
I don't. I'm an only child, but I've heard more people on here, and certainly in other instances, you'll hear people say, "Oh, a band is like a dysfunctional family," or a bunch of brothers that are at each other's throats, but yet they love each other. So yeah, I get the dynamic, but you certainly have to agree that like when you look up a lot of past bands, though, man, finding 4 guys that are the original 4 guys and have always been the 4 guys is rare.
Yeah. I mean, that happened to ZZ Top, right? Until Dusty Hill died. It'd been the same guys for 50 years.
Right. And I guess you could be like Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and like really hate each other, but still get up there and fake it, I guess. I mean, but you guys don't seem like you're faking it though.
No, there's a lot of love. The other thing is I talked about earlier, taking the pressure of making money out of the equation. And that's been really helpful. I'm absolutely certain that if we'd ever made any money, that would have been the end of us.
Yeah.
We would have squabbled and fought. And oh, hang on. I think my son is coming. I'm going to turn this off for a sec. Okay. Can you hold on for just a sec? Can I put you on hold for just a sec?
Absolutely. Of course. Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Sure. I'll be right back.
Yeah. I will, of course, sit here and talk to my audience while we wait for, this is NIKO WENNER, guitarist. Well, he's a multi-instrumentalist, but composes, arranges, produces, a lot like your old pal Rex Ruger here, a man of many talents, a guy that just, another hardworking show business, well, let's just call it a legend. And while we're waiting for him to tend to his child, which I certainly would not stand in any man's way for doing that, having 3 grown kids and numerous grandkids of my own, I understand that need. I salute it. It's fantastic to see people so hands-on and in tune with their kids. I love that. I love that the little guy interjected his cute little mug into our interview, and so glad that the NIKO is going to get him squared away here. So I guess you guys have no choice but to listen to me. Oh, there he is. He was going on and on to my audience and telling them how commendable it is to see father and son going off and doing their thing, and how fortunate we were to have the little guy stick his mug into our interview there, and an unexpected cameo appearance, we'll just call it.
That's what working from home gets you, right?
That's what yeah, I know. Don't I know? Well, I actually work in healthcare, so I'm out of the house. I work as a nurse by day. So, getting back to COVID, it was a pain in the ass time for me. We literally just stopped wearing our masks. I mean, 3 years of just like donning the scrubs. It was literally becoming a part of our everyday, our wardrobe.
Yes. Wearing a mask makes a lot of sense, especially in a healthcare situation. I mean, hospitals are where the sick people go. Everybody is sick. So it's not a bad idea.
Well, it's pretty crazy right now. I mean, you're way out on the West Coast, but here what's going on currently right now is we've got the wildfires up in Canada, and you go outside and all I can smell is smoke. That's how much it's drifting down here. And my son just said that they wouldn't let his kids go out for recess at school because of what's going on in the air. They canceled all recess. They canceled all after school stuff. So he showed me, he sent me a picture of like a map in our area of like what the air quality is. And apparently it's pretty bad right now.
Oh man, that's terrible. Because we get California wildfires here in the smoke.
Right.
I bought my first N95 mask back in 2019 because of the smoke. Yeah. And we ended up getting pretty good air filters in the house. Do you guys have some air filters?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious. I'm curious, when you guys, you guys have pretty much been pretty steady with your work rate, your releases or whatever. But explain a little bit, for maybe people that are more casual fans or even your hardcore fans who might not know what went on from 2007 to 2017. That was a long hiatus where you guys didn't really put anything out. You came back at 27 with Thin Black Duke, but what was going on in that 10-year period?
Yeah, that's a nice round number. In fact, we took the same amount of time working on the recordings that we did for Love's Holiday, which there is, whatever the 6-year gap. And so really it was about 4 years out of 10. So one of the things that happened, I wrote the songs for, I began the songs, wrote the songs for Thin Black Duke we're talking about.
Right.
2009, January, I have a demo for the first song, what I consider the first song on the record. And then worked. And then there was various things that happened. Like, for example, in 2012, we had a date to begin doing basics, the recording of the album in 2012 for Thin Black Duke. And my mom died like a couple of days before we were supposed to go in the studio.
Oh, awful. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thanks. These things happen. She'd been sick for a long time, but and the guys are like, let's do it. And, let's put it off. And it took another year to get on the schedule for Joe Ciccarelli. So there was a year where we didn't do anything, except what happened was that I was able to write 2 more songs, and that was enough to complete the record. So we were going to start with the 6 songs that we had, and I think there's 8 songs. So I wrote 7 and 8 in Paris at my girlfriend and now my wife's apartment. And so it was good. We got more time. We got to write the last 2 songs in the record. But it's bad because there was a year where nothing happened. And then we completed the record. I went to mastering in New York in 2016, and the record didn't come out for a year after that. So within that 10-year period, there was less than 4 years, I would say, where we actually worked, and a lot of stuff where it's just downtime, nothing happened.
Yeah.
For various things in our control and out of our control. And it's the same with Love's Holiday, the new one. COVID. I talked about that year and a half when nothing happened with the recording, and it looks like a long time on a calendar, but in fact, it's a relatively concise amount of work period.
If only that pesky little thing called life wasn't getting in the way of life, right? I mean,
well, yeah, and thank you for allowing me to go away and feed my kid. That's part of how we've been able to keep doing this. Is we have some priorities. The kids, we've got 10 kids in the band. We're not trying to make dough off it, and to let life enrich us. Somebody once told me that the more interesting of a person you are, the more interesting of a musician you are. They're kind of the same thing. The more that you take in, the more at peace you are, or whatever, that's going to make better art. And that's we've ended up at that, using that formula, and it seems to work for us.
And I've certainly touched on it here. Maybe some people that watch it, the podcast, would say ad nauseum. Maybe I've touched on it, but it is a pet peeve that sometimes the music industry and society in general has to put everything into a genre, and then the genres get subgenres, and everything's got to be in this neat little box. Now, I've got some of them written down here. Descriptions for OXBOW: art rock, experimental rock, noise rock. That one always gets me, noise rock, because I feel like all music is essentially some kind of there's a noise being made. I mean, for fuck's sake, noise rock shouldn't even be a genre. But I mean, do you guys, stripping away all of those and taking it back to the to ground zero here, what do you guys consider yourself as? I mean, did you like labels and genres? If someone was asking you, what kind of music is OXBOW? What do you tell them? Do you just keep a generic rock band?
Lately I've been saying we're really loud, like we're and that's not working. People just look at me funny, partly because the way that I dress and I'm pretty soft spoken. People think I play jazz, so that's partly. it confuses. So I don't know what to say about Oxbow. It's always, we have a lot of influences, and those, it's interesting to have the influences come through clearly. Dan has a lot of jazz in his background, and that you can hear that in
Absolutely.
the feel of his bass playing. He's a
Yes.
drummer and he's a pianist. I too played a lot of jazz as a young person, and I studied classical music in college, and then I've always loved pop music. I've always loved really aggressive, heavy, strange music.
Yeah.
The story that I tell is when I was a kid, the first recording that I paid for with my own money was Van Halen's first record. And I listened to it every day.
I'll applaud that all day. Yeah.
Wonderful. What an amazing guitar sound. What an amazing creative guitar player. And especially, I don't know if you remember when that record came out, nobody played music like that. And I'd never seen somebody tap on the guitar. Of course, everybody, you fool around, you make noises, but
Right.
to have the facility to use a flanger, I guess, maybe a phaser, I forget which, and have that sort of classical sounding organ sound. How the hell did he do that?
Crazy. I know.
And I would listen to the 8-track every morning before I went to Zero Period Jazz Band. So, and juxtaposing the two, those guys, their father was a jazz player, senior Van Halen, Dutch guy. And so that sort of swing and the harmonies were in the crazy heavy music that I made. I loved that recording. But eventually I realized I had this sort of epiphany, whatever you want to call it, one day riding on a school bus. I think I was going to a track meet. And I was just like, I saw this pattern of lights on the bus coming through the tree, when you drive through trees and the sun is coming through. And it was so really cool. And I thought, holy shit, what if Eddie Van Halen played guitar not with the rock and roll rhythms he was doing, but with this chaotic sort of,
Yeah.
and wow, what would that sound like? And, that's, people come to that kind of music a lot of different ways. For me, that was the moment when I was like 15 or something. And, that began that journey for me to have heavy stuff with a more chaotic feel. We do that, that was an impetus to go in that direction for music. So yeah.
And talk to me a little bit about Eugene as a frontman. I mean, I obviously all vocalists are usually I pretty much consider every lead singer is either like a love him or hate him. You could even say that about somebody that sings as beautiful as a Freddie Mercury. Some asshole out there probably hates his fucking voice. I don't know who this person is or whatever, but there's probably people out there who he's not their cup of tea. But Eugene, certainly very unique. His vocal style could certainly be seen as polarizing. But what does he bring, to the group as a frontman? Other than the fact that you stand next to him and he's in his tighty whities quite a bit, and almost completely nude some of the time. That certainly adds to the stage show. He obviously has the physique to pull it off, though, so I applaud him for that, because if I did that, it would not be a pretty sight at all. Eugene, obviously, tip-top shape, into the martial arts. Certainly not a guy that I would think many people are going to criticize his style to his face, I would hope. But he is a unique, singular talent, though. I love what he does, but what's the general consensus of the of what you hear back from rock journalists or like reviews or whatever? I love what Eugene does. You stand next to him and play with him all the time. What's your take on him as a front man?
We have been making music together for 40 years because
right.
We started writing songs before Oxbow existed.
Yep.
And that's, has been a really fruitful kind of thing.
Yes.
And it's been a really interesting thing to hear his voice, the sound of his voice, the timbre that evolve over the years. I'm really into voices, and I was a singer. I am a singer myself, sang in choirs and stuff. So I appreciate that as the voice as an instrument. So that's been an interesting part of making records and performing live. You know, you can read about what Keith Richard talked about in his. Did you read Keith Richard's autobiography called
His
Life?
memoir, yes, very long, very extensive book. Yep.
Yeah. So he talks about how difficult it is to be a lead singer, and that's not a job maybe that I would seek out. And I think that the public perception of a singer, what the job is, as far as not just musically, but as far as aesthetically, I can't pretend to understand what that does. We did have a discussion what that does, what the doing it well entails, and the pressures of doing that. It's just my imagination that allows me to get there. I don't know what it's really like. We did have a talk about not taking off clothes on stage at some point. And we arrived at an agreement that we've been on a journey to try to make our collective thing, the songs that we make, the recordings that we make, the performances that we make, to not be sensational to the point of distracting from our message.
Okay.
And so I don't know what the future will be. In the past, we've had an agreement to not have anybody naked on stage, because at some point that becomes the message. And I think that's not what our collective thing is, and that's maybe not what we do well. And we were getting a lot of reviews about that had a paragraph talking about nudity or talking about something that was not a collective effort.
Yep.
And where that comes from, where that goes, I don't know. But that, you mentioned that, and that's what I think about this.
Well, because
that has gone.
Obviously, certainly, a lot of bands, and the reason I ask about Eugene is because, obviously, not to impugn any of the other people's jobs in the band, but a lot of bands are initially judged on, the front man, really is like the focal point, not just on an album, but, especially like in a live setting. And what Eugene does, right, for people that don't know is, I wouldn't say 100% of the time he's up there classically singing. Sometimes he's, screeching, squalling, making all kinds of cool, very genuine types of noises. I mean, it's certainly not your standard, cut and dry style of singing. You would agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, for me, what's interesting is, I talked about one of the older songs on Love's Holiday. That I made a demo in 2022, maybe 2022, 2002, of the song that became $1 Million Weekend. Mm-hmm. And I sang on the demo, and I wrote a nice melody for it. And we didn't get around to recording it until Love's Holiday. And hearing Eugene sing that melody in his way, with his voice now, which is 20 years older, is a little more gravelly and rough.
Right.
But also with, all the things that he brings with his interpretation, it's very cool. And that's a really valuable thing. Yeah. I think the song itself, the subject matter, on the surface, my understanding of the lyric is that on the surface, it's sort of this wild time, but I think there's different themes that are deeper down, and that comes through in the recording that we all made together.
Right.
We actually made a video for that has both of those elements. There's a bit of a mysterious, perhaps, element to the story that you is revealed in the video, but there's a lot of the surface. There's like some crazy hotel room stuff in the video for $1 Million Weekend, and you'll see that eventually, but so for me, that's what's interesting. I don't know what it's like, and you talked to Eugene, so I don't. It's true that people look at the lead singer first, and part of that is very human, that the voice, I don't know if you've noticed, but you can hear someone talking in a very loud room. As a parent, you can hear your kid when they're trying to reach out to you. A baby's cry. These are
Absolutely.
things that's how we survived as
Yeah.
humans. The animal that is a human being, and the voice on a rock and roll recording is always going to be the thing that we hear first.
Yeah.
We're very visual. That's another. We're talking biology, of
Yep.
course. And you look at the person standing in front. They stand in front because you need to hear the voice.
Yep.
And now we have, that's something that's been happening for a million years when people have been doing performances together. We know, I'm certain of it. And that's just how it is. And like I said, I don't know what that job is like, but I understand it. And as a band, we're there to support that. It's a given. We don't have to use distortion on the guitar, but we do need to take into account that people want to hear the voice and they want to hear a message in the lyric. And it's our job to allow that to happen. And we can play games. In the past, we really tried to obfuscate, to hide, and to create this sort of mechanical mysteriousness in the recordings. Lots of vocals, not pronouncing clearly, distorted vocals. And we've grown to the point where, given that people, and I want to, and you want to, we're human beings, we want to hear the voice, we want to hear what the lyric is. I think that's a way to reach out to people and get a message across. So we've been trying to make things very clear.
Yeah.
And also the guitars as well. I would say that we've driven towards clarity, and that part of that is, and I'm talking now, I know, but
no, that's okay.
Part of what we've done is because of maybe some confidence in ourselves. We think that we've got something of value, and we don't want it to be obscured. I think that there's something cool that we are able to do, the four of us, maybe five with Joe, and we want it to come across in a very strong way. And we will always reference noise, we'll always reference classical music, we'll always reference jazz, we'll always reference rock and roll, and the roots of that with blues, the different genre, whatever you want to call it. But the message is pretty cool. It's a very human message. We're trying to talk about things that everybody can understand,
right?
In the music and the lyric, and having that clarity is really an interesting way for us to get that message across.
And when you guys put out an album, and the new album Love's Holiday comes out July 21st, when a finished piece of music is out, and you guys collectively as a band sit around and plan out the the live shows, your itinerary. Obviously, as you get older, the narrative changes. You mentioned having children. Maybe your day job has you tethered to the area, and you don't really have that ability to just pull up stakes and go. How do you guys sort that out as a band? Like what kind of dates you can do, for what duration of time you can go away for. How has that changed for you guys as a band as you've gotten older?
We haven't toured since 2018, and that's going to be physically challenging. 5 years starts to make a difference on one's knees and feet and arms, and we have a lot of gear on stage. It's like a lot of stuff to carry and set up every day. We don't have roadies, and we have created a tour in Europe in September 1 through September 16 that has no days off and a lot of driving. So we're going to see how it feels of 5 years off, and doing that again, and how our voices and fingers and knees can handle it. I love long tours. I love traveling, and I love playing music for people. I think that's one of the coolest things I've had the chance to do in my life. And a really long tour becomes a very strange and interesting trip. You lose yourself. Questions of identity and reality come up. We haven't been able to do long tours with OXBOW. I think we last did about 6 weeks in 96. So they've been getting shorter and shorter because of kids, because of jobs, because of lives and partners, wives. And that's okay. But I miss the long tours. I think this time, 2 weeks is going to be about all that we can handle
Yeah.
for the reasons I said. But I love that. And I really dig being able to play music for people. It's one of the best things in life.
And what's the difference in, because I know a lot of artists as their career, as their career goes on, an artist that I really love, going back into the '90s, into the grunge scene. I really loved a band called Screaming Trees. I have Mark Lanigan right here on my poster. And he said something very poignant in an interview shortly before he passed away. I watched an interview with him, and he made reference to the point that he does most of his touring in Europe because that's where he's, it's most, it makes the most economic sense for him. And it does seem like sometimes the European audience's taste sometimes is, even somewhat a little more sophisticated, and this is certainly not to impugn the United States by any means. We have great rock and roll fans here, but, where do you feel like OXBOW gets the best reception? Do you feel like European audiences get you guys more? Is it economically viable to tour the States for you guys?
Yeah. Firstly, interesting that you mentioned Mark Lanigan. I did a tour with some old friends in a band called Swell in April of this year in Europe. I played music with Swell. It's a San Francisco band from 93 until 2003, 10 years.
Yeah.
Really close friends with the bass player, Monty Valier. And the lead singer, David, died. So we did a tour with a new singer. He was the original guitar player. And turns out he sounds not exactly, a lot like Mark Lanigan.
Yeah.
He has this very deep, resonant voice.
Gravelly. Yeah.
Gravelly as hell.
Yeah.
In tune. And, maybe not quite as melodious at this point yet. Is one of the cool things about Lanigan's voice that I hear is it goes to a lot of places.
Yes. Yeah.
But the guy, John, an amazing singer, an amazing musician, singing for Swell. It was so cool to hear his voice. He never sang before for a band. He wasn't a singer at all. And so he never sang backups. And now he's the lead singer on tour in Europe. So that was really cool to hear Lanigan every day.
Yeah, talk about out of the frying pan into the fire, though, huh? You've never sang anything, and now you're a lead singer.
and it totally works, thank God. But part of that is Europe, So the great thing about Europe is that they have state support. So that allowed a band like Swell and also a band like OXBOW to start out. It's pretty cool to play a lot of places in Germany, to play interesting places in France. I'd rather play a crowd of 5, in Paris than a crowd of 5 in, let's say Lancaster, California.
Yeah.
No offense to Lancaster, but, and the way that clubs in Europe is that they get support and they don't have to make money back as much because of the way the economic system works. And that gave OXBOW a chance to, over time, build an audience because we could not lose our shirts. We would get a decent wage.
Right.
And the clubs would take a chance on us. So we built an audience. Same thing with Swell. Now Swell has this audience, even though it's been a very long time. And OXBOW has an audience in Europe. And I love that. And that's very cool. The funny thing is right now, there's a conversation, maybe not for you and I today, but there's a conversation about what that means as far as state support. So I really believe that's a cool thing. And what is difficult to figure out then is that there's a lot of great American bands,
right,
and something about the pressure of having to make a living here. I don't know. Is that a false, do they really have an effect on each other? I don't know.
Right.
So my wife is French, and I spent a lot of time in France, and I see the benefits of France, the interest in culture and the interest in preserving culture. There's the wine there is really interesting, and it's cheap as hell. Whereas in the United States, the focus on making a living if you lose your job and get sick and have a problem with your health, you're living in the street.
Sure.
It's not true in France.
Yeah.
There's a pressure in the United States that is really difficult for people, and it's kind of screwed up. At the same time, it seems to produce some interesting effects. I'll probably never buy a French computer.
Right.
I'm not an economist. I can't figure that out, but I think about the differences a lot, and it affects music as well. Maybe OXBOW needed to start in the United States and to have the success built in Europe. At this point, we're getting a lot better fees in the United States. Well, how does that work? I don't know. We're not even playing France on this tour because we didn't get any, interesting offers in France, which is, I have a lot of friends, and now I have, families in France. So it's really difficult to agree. We're not playing France. It's been since 2018 since we have, and it might be, 2024 at the earliest until OXBOW plays France again because of the change in economics. It's a lot to digest. I've brought up a lot of big subjects, but it's funny to the place that we've arrived at with touring.
And I would be remiss if I didn't ask, though, are there plans, since we're on the subject of touring, are there plans in support of this album to do dates in the United States?
Absolutely. At this point, we're talking about October. We're going to do some East Coast stuff and some West Coast stuff. I could be wrong. We're going to announce that fairly soon, but I believe October.
And I don't know if this has changed at all recently, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, but still on Ipecac Records.
Yeah, for sure. Love's Holiday is out. Yep.
And that is, of course, partly owned by speaking of great vocalists, the great Mike Patton from Faith No More. For people that don't know, his record label. How do you guys end up on that label? Does he like what you guys do? Was he previously a fan? Did you guys have some kind of a relationship? He's also a West Coast guy too. Did you guys have prior knowledge of each other?
Yeah. I'll tell the story this way: that in '93 we were making a record. How did that work? No, it was '91. So Mr. Bungle was recording at a studio in San Francisco called Different Fur, and they'd flown John Zorn out to record the first Mr. Bungle record. And I knew about them, and I knew John a little bit, and I'd asked John Zorn to play saxophone on the second OXBOW record that we were making in '91, maybe 1990. And I said, hey, when you're out in San Francisco, come by and play some saxophone on a song called Cat and Mouse. On our second record, King of the Jews. And the short story is that he was so busy making that Bungle record. You must have heard it. It's pretty amazing recording, very complex. Yeah. And this isn't the era of tape. They weren't doing it to Pro Tools. And so cutting tape and doing all the perfect transitions to talk about genre. And so he wasn't able to do it, but I remember calling into the studio, and John's like, "Oh, the guys say hi," but I've never actually met Patton, but we were aware of each other, and I actually went to go see Mr. Bungle in Oakland a couple, 2 weeks ago, and I'd never seen Patton sing with Mr. Bungle before. I'd seen him do a couple of John Zorn game pieces. Astounding improvisations.
Incredible.
Yeah, and so I don't know if you know those pieces. They are graphic scores with a little bit of text saying, the sound of a square, or I forget what the directions are. Yeah. And then there's improvisation. He will point to people, and you deliver. You do something, and Mike is, no surprise, able to do that amazingly. And then also I saw Mike with Laurie Anderson 6 months ago, which he came through San Francisco. Also amazing, also improvisation. Then finally to see him in a band context, and it was so amazing, such cool shit. Oh, I think I hear somebody back there. Hang on just a second.
Sure.
Okay, hang on just a second.
I'm always good with that, man. And of course, talking to NIKO WENNER here. If For people that don't know, OXBOW. First of all, if you don't know OXBOW, you should have your rock and roll card fucking pulled immediately. This is an important band. This is a band that's making interesting music, eclectic music, like all music. Certainly, something is not for everyone, but what they do is very unique. And with the music business sometimes being so derivative, bands like this, as NIKO just mentioned, the aforementioned Mr. Bungle, Faith No More. We've touched on guys like Mark Lanigan. These guys that are out here, not just making music, but making interesting music. That's the key right now. The world's got such an influx of music right now, streaming platforms. Somebody can sit home and make an album on their fucking computer. I'm just stream of conscious talking like while you go and putting you on the pedestal and just talking the music business until you return. But being on a label, talk to me a little bit about what that's like, because I talked to a lot of musicians on here, and over 120 episodes, and a lot of them established acts, but are still doing the DIY thing. Not everybody has label support. Here in 2023, what's label support do for a band like OXBOW?
People talk about a label as context. So yeah, we could put our own records out. We might collect a larger share of, the meager amount of money that we get from the recordings. And that's fine. As I said, we decided to not try to make a living out of this. And yes, we could do it in some ways ourselves. It would be very different, but I really like a record label because of the context. We are suddenly label mates with the Melvins. We're suddenly label mates with Mr. Bungle, which I haven't really thought about very much. That's very cool. Yeah, I grew up outside Seattle, and I have an affinity. I'm sort of the same age as the guys in the Melvins, and something about Washington State and all that. And I've known them forever, of course. And I don't call them on the phone and say, "Hey, let's go get a drink." But I know them. When we see each other, we say hi, and that's a really cool thing. So the context for OXBOW, I loved being in the context of Hydra Head. That was a very cool thing. The context of Neurot Recordings, like, wow, what great company we had on these record labels. So it's not really economic, but it is things like, doing all the stuff that we're not good at. Yes, we can do marketing. Yes, we could, talk to the pressing plants for manufacturing. Yes, we are able to do that. But a record label for us is very cool, because then I can sit and take the ideas that I hear every day and write more songs rather than spending time trying to get our records pressed,
Right.
And they're very good at that. And they're, Ipecac has been really wonderful for us so far. And I'm excited to have, by context, there's people that say, "Oh, Ipecac, oh, who's this?" The level of awareness is very cool. So that's great for us. But let me finish the story. So I didn't know that Patton was like so fucking authoritative on stage. And for example, Dave Lombardo is an awesome musician, a titanic drummer.
Amazing.
He doesn't need anybody's help, but it was very cool I suss out, and somebody confirmed that I think this is true, that Patton was telegraphing, in a sense, conducting the songs to the drummer, to Dave Lombardo. It's like, here comes the bridge, now this is the part where, and I don't usually see singers have that level of engagement with the form of the music.
Right.
So here's a guy that, everybody knows what an amazing musician, but I didn't know that to that level. So great singer, always in tune, lots of different tones and timbres to the voice, but also an understanding of the form. It was quite a night. And it was an amazing evening to see them play, but very cool stuff. So that was fun.
And he also did an amazing album a couple of years back with, again, we're talking about the French, and I might be mistaken, but a French composer. He did a project called Corpse Flower.
Yeah, what was that?
The project was called Corpse Flower, and it was Mike Patton, some Jean somebody. I'm forgetting the name right now, but it was like from what I understood, it was him and another composer, and very classical music undertones, but yet his unmistakable voice over it. Again, something a lot like you guys do, very unique. Because you get so much stuff in the music business right now is just so derivative. And I was talking about it while you stepped away there about how much we need those eclectic, interesting bands, because there is a lot of influx of music right now. People can sit home on their computer and they can make an album, and while they're not knowing how to play an instrument, it does seem like it lacks that heart and soul that actually goes into creating music. But there's certainly a lot of music out there. But you yourself, as a fan, if you've got time to sit and listen to music as a fan, and I'm guilty of this, and I'm trying to be better about it, and with not just falling back on my old favorites. And the podcast certainly helps being able to use it as a platform, for younger guys and for newer guys. But as a fan, you got time to listen to music. What do you like?
Yeah.
You explore new bands a lot?
There's never enough time. But for example, just if I go to like a guitar, like a gear forum on Facebook, somebody hit me to a British band called Pupil Slicer, who are fucking amazing. It's sort of math, noise, mathcore, whatever. But really interesting. Like, there's no type of music that I do not like, because there's always somebody doing something intellectually interesting, emotionally interesting, just super cool. I love, math, noisecore, whatever, but Pupil Size are really cool. I just bought the new Sparks record because I love Sparks since I was 10 years old, so there's an old band, but there's never enough time. I try to spend a good amount of time every week listening to Bach, because that is a lifetime. It's a universe of fascinating music. So I try. Guilt is a great motivating force, but I try to not feel too guilty about not too much spending a lot of time always seeking out new music, because there's a lot of value in old music. I listen to Beethoven's sonatas. I love, and I can learn something from still listening to old Led Zeppelin records about the way that they interact, the sounds. There's value in repeat listening if it's not lazy. And I will listen to Simon and Garfunkel and just sort of space out. I will listen to Melvins and just space out. I love all kinds of music in it. But if you work actively, there's no shame in listening to old music. But at the same token, I don't listen to enough new music. So I'm always open to it. I'm
trying to be better. I'm trying to be a lot better about it too. And as I said, I think the podcast helps, man, because as much as a thrill as it is to talk to established artists, like yourself, who've been doing it for a long time. It's also nice to see these kids coming up and having a platform, because I think if they didn't have this platform, with the way the business is structured right now, it's not that same formula that it was back in the 80s, where a label saw you, they loved you, they signed you, they threw a ton of money at you, they put you on airplanes, and they sent you on tour, and they got you in all the rock magazines, and I mean, it's quite a different deal now. So being somebody that's been in the music business for as long as you have, and I asked this question of a lot of the young artists who come on here. How do you navigate through the music, the landscape of the music business now, and catapult and or progress your band along now? We've talked about, social media obviously is a big part of it. You mentioned earlier making videos, even though the MTV that we once knew does not exist, but videos do seem to still be doing good on YouTube. But how do you propel your band forward? Like, what is it nowadays? Getting on a great tour package, writing a great album, getting a lot of streams. What's the ingredient nowadays?
Well, if I knew, I'd do it. My wife is of an age that when she was pretty young, she was really into Nirvana, We talk a lot about that, you know, like it or not, Nevermind changed pop music. It changed the recording industry, changed things. How did that happen? Why did it happen? I can talk for a long time about what I think, but if I totally understood it, I would do it. You know, it's mysterious in the end.
Right.
Nobody can tell you. You and I can't go out and write a record together that would change music. It's a lot of forces, and similarly, I don't exactly know how the best way to promote a band. I do know that we're very lucky at this point to have the context of Ipecac. They're very helpful for us to get our message, to get our records in front of people. People will decide, but just having people lend an ear, an audience, having folks out there, that's very cool. Yeah, we've chosen to make a ton of videos. Every moment, every second of music on Love's Holiday has a visual analog. We've made videos for the interstitial music for every song. Okay. And there's talk of putting that out together as a package, a visual thing, which is cool, I think. Maybe that will work, maybe it doesn't, but I find it fun and interesting challenge to be a part of making videos, to sort of, you know, work on doing that. And first and foremost, you got to do something good. You know, that's, let's not forget that. It seems obvious, but the focus has to be on making things as good as possible. And that's partly why it takes us so long, because my job is to be super careful. Being an OXBOW for so long, we do tend to have our own spheres, and there's some in the band that are like, go, go, go. And my job seems to be, okay, but wait to make things proper, to have them be finished, to be as good as possible. You know, we talk a lot about of perfect is the enemy of good, but you don't want to always just be good. You need to strive for something to be great. So that's a lot of dialogue, a lot of talk that we have within the band. You know, I don't know how to do it any better than what we're doing now. And I try to remember that having lots of things to keep creating, to keep writing songs, to make sure they're good, to be careful, but not be too careful. You know, beyond that, hell if I know. We're just lucky to have a record label like Ipecac.
Well, you mentioned your creative process earlier, but specifically, if you're going to write songs, what do you use as the impetus when you're going to create music? Are you somebody that draws inspiration from, you know, books or movies, or, you know, watching the news, or like, where do you collectively, you know, where do you draw ideas from? Because and the second part of that question is, do you find it hard to create music when, you know, as you said earlier, you're not doing it for financial gain? Obviously when you make a statement like that, it's obviously, you know, evident that it's really OXBOW is certainly, you know, for lack of a better term, a passion project. This is obviously music you guys make because you're passionate about it. But, you know, in that same context, is it hard to get inspiration? Like when, you know, like, oh, we're going to deliver this album and, you know, it's going to go 10 times platinum. You know what I mean? Is it hard? Is it hard to get yourself kind of kickstarted and motivated?
I would love to have that kind of pressure. That, you know, being worried about making another platinum album. That's the problem that I would like to have. You know, in the past, I remember writing one of the parts of Cat and Mouse. Cat and Mouse is a song on our second record, King of the Jews, and the Gulf War had started. And I remember there was a TV on in the room, and there was video footage of the war of a you know, like danger, like directly, like it's a really stupid thing, but that was, so that kind of thing has happened. But I'll tell you about, there's a song on Love's Holiday called Lovely Murk. Talk about a new artist. So the song, the guitar line and the melody for the second voice was something that I wrote in 2011. So my mom died in 2012. She'd been sick for a long time. She had Alzheimer's, and Alzheimer's is, you may know, a really nasty thing. I
See
would
it
not.
every day. Yep.
Oh, is that the kind of nursing that you do?
I work in a nursing home. Yes, yeah. So I'm an
Fuck.
LPN. I mean, me and my wife kind of tongue in cheek joke about it. I mean, there's certainly nothing funny about growing old and getting dementia, but she's also a nurse. She works labor and delivery, so she's kind of bringing them into the world, and I'm kind of, in effect, I'm kind of seeing them. I'm kind of seeing them on the other end of the spectrum. I mean,
Yeah, those are very powerful times in people's lives.
Yeah.
In the parents' lives and in the kids.
Yeah.
My father was a pediatrician, and he talked about, with his focus on child development, and he would talk about, sometimes the pediatrician would be called into deliveries, so he saw a lot of babies delivered. He talk about little babies that they are the full-grown person, the personality is there right at birth, and it just takes a while to show. I think about that a lot with our kids. Wow, so you between you and your wife, you're seeing some powerful times.
Yeah, I know. Like, we'll sit around sometimes and like talk about it, as people in healthcare do, because nothing really grosses us out. Like, we could be having family dinner, and almost everybody in the family is in some facet of healthcare, and we could be sitting around having a spaghetti dinner and talking about changing a colostomy bag. So nothing really, there's nothing that really grosses us out or really affects us too much, having been doing this for a long time. But it is kind of odd, and not to make light of it, but you see people coming into the world, babies coming in, they're bald and wearing a diaper, and a lot of the old men that are on their way out are bald and wearing a diaper. So
that's
circle of life, really.
Inescapable truths. Oh man.
And not to make light about it, but
no.
It is funny, and we're all not going to end up with Alzheimer's, but we inevitably are all going to reach the finish line at some point.
Sooner or later.
Sooner or later, yeah.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing.
And so, with this album coming out July 21st,
let me finish the story.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Let me finish the story. So, Lovely Merc was thinking about my mom losing her mind, losing reality. She didn't recognize me, of course, at the end.
Yep.
And so I wrote a song about that, with the lyric, with the guitar part, and with the melody. And it was just too personal. It was not for OXBOW. We didn't use that. In 2011, we didn't use that on Thin Black Duke, but after 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I was ready to share that with the band and ready to make that be an OXBOW song. This record, Love's Holiday, we took all comers. We took in everything. And so Joe Ciccarelli said we needed a second voice to do that melody, and he said, "Hey, do you know the singer Lingua Ignota? I think she could be really cool to sing that melody for Lovely Merc." I was like, "No, I don't know." I checked it out. Talk about new music! Like, holy shit! Here's somebody who's making noisy, super emotional recordings that have a classical music influence.
Yeah.
Oh, I was like, fuck yeah, with this amazing, big, strong voice. Very emotional. Perfect. So I contacted Kristen, and she agreed to sing on the recording. And that it turned out really well, I think. And so that's an example of new music and also inspiration. And so two things that became like a choir of voices with overdubs, just like the choir that we had. So that's kind of the theme of Love's Holiday, to have lots of backing voices. And the other thing, being family and love, for me, that was all about love and trying to put myself in my mom's shoes. Super tough. It's a very emotional song for me. But cool, and it ties into everything that album's about, love and what it means to have that love.
And going back like previous to OXBOW, and again, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. It was Whipping Boy before that, correct?
That's yeah.
And that was certainly more punk hardcore type of music, right? I mean, is that what you would typify it as?
Yes, I think that that band's, certainly the first recordings of Whipping Boy were like pretty genre perfect hardcore, but those guys before I joined, they're all a bunch of smart dudes.
Yeah.
They're into other things. Suddenly the second record, Muru Muru, is very psychedelic. So
Yeah.
those influences came out. And when I joined, then the metal music that I'd grown up on, Steve, the original guitar player in Whipping Boy, and I connected totally on that. And then Steve left. So, yes, there's always that very straight up hardcore thing, but then we delved into a lot of other music as well with Whipping Boy.
And for you, obviously starting out like playing, for lack of a better word, extreme music, certainly hardcore and metal. It's not for everybody. But what was the first music that that you really remember, getting, where the bug kind of bit you, so to speak? Like, what do you remember who it was that first really resonated with you when you were really first aware of like, okay, I like this, I mean, like this, I can feel this is getting into my blood here. I might want to do this. Do you remember what music really impacted you the most?
Yeah, I mean, as far as noisy stuff, it's Jimi Hendrix. And Jimi Hendrix,
yeah,
the view of his music now is, wow, an amazing guitar player. And people forget his amazing pop songs. He was a pretty great singer too.
Yeah.
And all the studio stuff he did, but also just the noise. I love that. Like, holy shit, you could take a stock Stratocaster and push it against a Marshall stack and get really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And then
talk about experimenting. I know. Talk about experimenting.
Yeah. Hang on just a sec.
Yeah. I love the fact that he's going into talking about obviously the great Jimi Hendrix, and I certainly will agree. While Nico steps away here, that Jimi Hendrix certainly always up there in the pantheon of the greatest, if not the greatest himself, guitar players. But yet his musical sensibility and his his ability to write songs, absolutely amazing. I'm so glad that you brought Jimi Hendrix's other talents up, because a lot of times he's just kind of lumped in as like, geez, he's the greatest guitar player of all time. Yeah, but what about his writing and his arranging and his stage presence and all that stuff? It was a full package. And I think sometimes over the years it's kind of gotten scaled back to just Jimmy was the greatest guitar player ever.
Right. Yeah, just thinking about career choices, when you listen to the progression of the records from being tight little pop songs to these really, by the third record, these soundscapes, and what does that mean? And that record in 1968 was a #1 album in the United States. It sold more records. This crazy double album with like Moon Heard the Tides Gently, Gently Away.
Yeah.
Like, wow. It's a fascinating choice that he made, and it's so successful that he changed his style of music and really touched a nerve. Like, holy shit, so cool.
Yeah.
So, I had a reoccurring dream about Jimi Hendrix as a kid. He was so important to me. And, the dream was something about being in a crowded restaurant and seeing my friend. I considered him like someone that I knew well.
Yeah.
And he would turn and leave the restaurant through the back, and very bright restaurant. The door was dark. It's easy to understand that it was about his death. And I wanted to go talk to him. Hey, be careful. Don't take those sleeping pills that night.
Yeah. Heed my warning, Jimmy.
Exactly. And it never worked. And, so he was is still very important to me as a musician, as a recording artist, and talking about career. He had a lot of things going on in his life that I never will, his parents, but
well, you also brought up an affinity for that Pacific Northwest and that Seattle area. He's another one of those guys too. Yeah,
exactly.
Great music has really been rolled out of the Pacific Northwest for years and years and years. It's a shame that everybody recognized Jimmy from Seattle, in the 60s. And then it was kind of forgotten about till kind of the grunge thing exploded in the 90s. And then there was that spotlight back on that city again, I mean, I think great music's been coming out of there for years, and it just kind of recycled back around in the 90s. It was kind of time to put the light back on them, I guess.
I left there in '83, so there wasn't much going on as
Right.
far as attention, and I came down to the Bay Area, and that worked out pretty well for me. I'm glad to be here, but
Yeah.
it was an interesting thing. I was in the Seattle area from age 6 until age 19.
Yeah.
Pretty cool stuff, and I think something about being in the corner of the country.
Yeah.
You
Tucked
know,
away safely.
yeah.
Yeah.
There was no Starbucks. There wasn't Amazon yet. There wasn't the companies that came up. It was a little, but it was cool that the
Yeah.
lack of pressure allowed music to do what it did. And I think that that's part of why you got all those cool musicians there. They didn't have the pressure of being in San Francisco, which is incredibly expensive, of
Yeah.
the spotlight of Los Angeles, or the pressure of economic pressure and the spotlight of New York. You know, it just allowed people to do what they were doing.
Well, I can't wait for Love's Holiday to come out. You know,
Thanks, man.
I appreciate all the time you spend here with me, man. I'm glad we were finally able to do this, and we were able to carve out some time here. I implore people to go out, you know, as I always do when I'm flying the flag for a band. I try as hard as I can to pimp that band, so to speak. And I certainly encourage people to go out, because I always
Right
love
on.
when somebody's doing something interesting. I've had Billy Gould on here from Faith No More. You know, we talked about Mike Patton, just such a forward thinking, ahead of their time fucking band. I just, you know, that's the kind of music that really gets me, excited. Just bands that are really doing stuff outside the box. Certainly you guys in OXBOW are certainly one of those bands. So, you know, I applaud you guys for that. And I've got my takeaways here. I've got my, the things that I made notes about, what we could take away. Kids are going to make you more pitch perfect. We're going to shoot for Eugene to keep more clothes on. And I've got pupil slicer written down. So, I mean, I think I've got some good takeaways here. You know, I mean.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Pupil Slicer, I have a new record out. I haven't even heard the new one. I need to get it on GarageBand. The first one is astounding, just super smart. Check it out. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you like? What should I listen to? Give me a suggestion, please.
I'm really liking this band right now, and it breaks my heart to say this, because a couple days ago I had a bad mishap with my computer here, and I had to retool my whole program, and I lost 6 episodes that I already had recorded. Now, long story short, I've reached out to these people, and so far they've all been receptive to running it back again and redoing it. One of them was and they all know who they are, but some of them really broke my heart. One of them was with the guitarist for Agnostic Front. I was gutted.
Yeah.
I also had just all of them were good to me. And but thankfully I'll get the chance to redo them again. Some of it's just time constraints, and some of them are in other countries. A couple of them were guys in Australia, so the 14-hour time difference there. So I have to make sure that they can do it at 10 o'clock in the morning, which was 8 o'clock the night before for us. So so it's just getting on the same page. But one of the bands is from the Netherlands, and they're a band called Cryptosis.
Oh, wow.
And they're a three-piece thrash band. But what I really like, their debut album came out in 2021. It's an album called Bionic Swarm, and I really like it because it kind of sets it's more of a concept album. And, it's kind of set in like a dystopian future where technology, and this is stuff like bands like Voivod and stuff have been talking about for years, where technology has kind of, almost overtaken humanity, and to think that they're only like a 3-piece with how amazing that they are, it really ups the stakes a lot when you're thinking, wow, 3 people are making this fantastic. And it's very progressive thrash too. It's not just going through the motions with some power chords and stuff. I mean, it's really intricate and really great. You were talking about like math stuff earlier. You get a lot of technical death metal stuff, and but very technical, very progressive in nature. And so I'm really digging them right now. And oddly enough, watching Eugene's podcast Show Stomper, he really got me into he opens up the show with Bob Riley singing Stigmata. And so he kind of I was a metal kid first, and then kind of got into hardcore music, so I missed the boat on Stigmata. But I'm so glad that I found them now. I've reached out to Bob. He's going to come on and do the podcast. Cool. So it's always nice when people are giving each other musical suggestions. But
fantastic. The band from Holland is Cryptosis?
After we close here, I'll text you. Yeah.
I think about 2112. I mean, Rush record that I grew up on, listened to a million times. technology,
Yeah.
futurism,
Yeah.
complex recordings.
Yeah,
Not
I mean,
thrash, but
just a really good band, and I've already had
yeah.
one of the members on, and the
Oh,
interview that I lost was with the actual lead singer. Just heard back from him today, and he's like,
okay.
"Boy, that's a real fucking bummer, but I understand. I'll look at my schedule and we'll make it happen." But when you're pouring so much in these interviews, it's like you're gutted, and sometimes people. Usually there's a couple of guys designated in bands who like doing press and like doing that kind of stuff. So you hate to bother these people for a second go around. Hey, come on and have another conversation with me again. Thankfully, they've all been gracious, and
Of course.
I think I'll be able to go back and get them all done again. So thankfully,
Of course. Well, it's good to talk with you. You're an interesting guy. I appreciate this.
And I really appreciate it too. And I think I know what I'm going to get with a band like Pupil Slicer. So I'm going to prepare myself already. But I don't think this is going to be any lighthearted fare here. This is going to be
no, but it's complex. It's complex, and one of the big questions. I know we've been at this a long time, but when you have music that intense, you need a break. And the way that they constructed their album is the first one is really interesting. And solving that question, you can't just assault somebody for 40 minutes. You can, but after a while, you don't need another record that does that. So Pupil Slicer figured out how to be smart and, obviously slicing your pupils and doing
it's making my eyes hurt just thinking about it.
A Chien Andalou reference and all this shit. Yeah. Check it out. Let me know what you think.
Yeah. I want to ask you, and this is usually my hardest question in closing here. This winds up being the deal breaker right here. But you, NIKO, are dropped on the desert island, and you can only bring one album. Do you have a desert island pick in mind? Yeah. I mean, this is the only goddamn thing you're going to listen to until the day you die. And none of this shit of cheating, NIKO. None of this compilation shit or greatest hits albums. An album that you're going to bring with you to this desert island.
Would probably be Bach, Goldberg Variations, played by. I've been listening to it for a very long time, and the way that music is constructed, it's like every three it's a very simple melody, and then variations. There's, I believe, 32 variations on this melody.
Yeah,
it's super math. You can look at the printed music, the written, and do the computations and understand the relationship. And there's every three. There's lots of really cool stuff, and it's very emotional. And it's, I've been listening to that. It's what I wake up to every morning, and I still want to hear it. I
think you hit the nail on the head, because the reason this winds up being a slippery slope for most guests is, and even I've wrestled with it. If I'm on a desert island and I've got nothing else to listen to, as much as I love heavy music, you're going to go through the gamut of emotions. You might not want to hear heavy every single day. You need something that gives you some diversity.
Yep. So for me, that music is always giving. It's just an endless deep well that I always find something interesting. And God knows I love distorted guitar. I love noise. I love breaking things. That's a really cool, and I understand that. But for me, the Goldberg Variations is just endlessly giving. It has so much to give.
Yeah. I appreciate all this time, man, and please keep in touch, and hopefully we can do this again sometime on down the road. I really enjoyed it, and all the best with the album. I'm looking forward to it. For people that are waiting for it, July 21st. We've got a little bit of time to wait here, but I think it's going to be worth the wait. From the two songs that I've heard on the on my Apple Music platform, I'm giving it I'm already giving it the premature stamp of approval, because
Thanks, man.
I'm pretty sure that I know what I'm going to get from you guys, and it's always consistently awesome. So hats off to you guys, man.
Thank you. Wonderful to talk to you. Thanks for your time.
I appreciate it, NIKO. Thank you so much, and we'll talk again soon.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Mark.
All right, thanks, buddy. Later on.
Bye.
There he goes, folks. NIKO Wenner, guitar player, arranger, composer, multi-instrumentalist, big part of the creative juggernaut of a band that we know as OXBOW. And I shouldn't have to phonetically spell that for you fucking people out there. Come on, OXBOW. But anyway, do yourself a favor. Do your homework. As always, I don't do this for every band. Maybe I am starting to get a little soft and do it for a lot of my guests, but OXBOW is 110% Rex Ruger approved. Stamp of approval. A phenomenal band, an eclectic band, an interesting band. I've had Eugene S. Robinson on here. They're very charismatic, fearsome lead singer. He is amazing. The whole band is just an absolute juggernaut. I used that word already, but just a creative force doing music like no other band out there is. At least if there is, I don't know about them. OXBOW is very much in its own lane. I implore people to go out and check them out. They put out an album in 2017 called The Thin Black Duke, which is a fucking bona fide masterpiece. They're about to drop, as I said earlier, their new album July 21st called Love's Holiday, and that is on Ipecac Records, owned by the great Mike Patton of Faith No More and Mr. Bungle. So it's great that OXBOW is on a label, and not only just a label, but a label that I think is going to suit them well creatively, because Mike Patton is such an interesting, eclectic force of creativity himself. So that's going to be a very happy marriage, I do believe. And I implore people, go out and check out OXBOW. You know, again, that interesting killer music is out there. Do your fucking homework on it, man. And I hope you guys really enjoyed that. My hat's off to Nico, juggling and finding the time to join me. Obviously, his numero uno priority is being a father. Had to step away for a couple of times to take care of his son. I always applaud that and understand it 1000% as a parent and grandparent myself. And yet still kick-ass fucking interview with a kick-ass musician. Interesting fucking guy. And I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. And until we get together and do this thing again, I remind you all to take it easy and keep it sleazy.